I think that's the reason it actually ended up being released at all.
Sam, Clothier, the mastermind behind Final Outpost and the CEO of Exabyte Games.
Some people asked me after it came out, hey Sam, what game engine did you use to make this game? And I was like, I didn't use a game engine. And they were like, what? Yeah, with any game, it needs to be engaging and fun for them to want to keep playing it, right? Sitting on the train, they're like, okay, well, I've got nothing else to do. So that's the difference, I think. With Ben, my brother, for the first sort of 15, 14 years of our life, we were just enemies. From my perspective, he just became much easier to get along with suddenly. Unfortunately, given finances and so on, we can't guarantee we will be able to carry on working on the same project after June or July this year. But
Welcome everyone to the inaugural episode of the Final Outpost podcast. Today I'm joined by none other than Sam, Clothier, the mastermind behind Final Outpost and the CEO of Exabyte Games. I want to start by congratulating you on the 4-year anniversary of Final Outpost. How does that make you feel?
Thanks, mate. It's been a long time since the game kit was released, right? Yeah. Happy that it's come this far and we're still working on it now. It's done well enough for us to still be able to work on it.
Yeah, of course,
So
even as your friend, there are some questions today that I'm obviously dying to ask. I don't know the answers to them, so for all the viewers out there, it's going to be an exciting talk today. So Sam, we're eager to hear your thoughts. Let's jump right in. I want you to start by telling the viewers a little bit about yourself. If there are any viewers out there that haven't played Final Outpost, how can you explain it in layman terms? Give a brief overview of the game.
Well, it's a zombie, I guess it's not really a survival game. It's more of a management town building game, kind of a simulation game really. And you have to defend your town against the zombies, while sort of managing your resources and what jobs you assign your citizens to. I guess the idea is to show in the apocalypse, it's supposed to be that there's this idea that the people that are in your group are the most important resource. So that's why there's this, one of the main, I guess the main unique feature of the game is that you've got this, each person gets assigned a job and you can change them all the time. That's sort of the unique bit of the game that I would point out to people. Yeah,
okay. Obviously, we both grew up in the very rural area in the southwest of England. I want to get into sort of the background, obviously, behind gaming itself for you. So how did living in a small village affect you growing up, do you think? And do you think that there was nothing to do outside as a kid, maybe, when you were younger, and maybe gaming was sort of respite for you?
You're putting words in my mouth there a bit, I think. I think there's still stuff to do outside when you're in the countryside. I guess it's obviously best for nature and stuff. You go surrounded by fields everywhere. We're living in little villages dotted around the place, and you can't really get anywhere to see any of your friends because they're in another village that you can only get to by car. So it's not great for visiting your friends and stuff like that unless they happen to be in the same village, which by the time you get to secondary school doesn't happen because you're meeting people from the whole area. But in primary school it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I guess that does influence how we play games, because it means it's more important for us to be able to play with each other online, because then you can still spend time with each other while not when you're in that time period that you don't have access to a car and stuff, and you still want to go do something with your friends. But it's not a bad thing, I don't think.
No.
You can still go on trips to this is nearby towns and cities and stuff. There's stuff to do around. It's probably got more to do with the fact that I wasn't really that interested in going out places in the first place. And the same thing happened with Ben. my brother. Like he's also a big gamer as well. I think most people in our friend groups were also gamers. We spend all our time playing games basically. So
yeah, of course. Yeah. It's why we use obviously Discord as one of our biggest communities, and for us ourselves as gamers, it's a really nice place to go to talk to people. So that's definitely part of it. You talked about primary school. Obviously, you went to school with a few other people that we know. Mm-hmm. If you could go back and give advice to that younger version of yourself, what do you reckon you'd say now?
I don't think my self back then would have been capable of taking my advice now. I was a bit of a crazy kid, I think, before I went to secondary school. Bit of a class clown. I don't think. I guess maybe not get so annoyed with Ben about things because we used to have a lot of fights over the computer because we had one computer for the house. So it was always like once we got back from school, from primary school, then whose turn it was on the computer and whatever, and then
player one, player two kind of thing.
No, we always played single player games. Yeah. So it's more like okay, this person is allocated an hour or half an hour, whatever, on the computer. Depends who's looking after us that afternoon as well. Yeah, some people we had a neighbour who was a lot older than my parents, who, when my parents were at work, would look after us sometimes after school, and she's from grew up in the 60s or something, and so she didn't like the idea of us playing on computers, so we only got 20 minutes at a time, 20 minutes a day when she was looking at us, which isn't great. Yeah,
that is very limited.
We made the most of it then, trust me.
You probably could get through one mission in Skyrim in that amount of time.
It wasn't Skyrim then.
Well, yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, this was we were playing Alice Greenfingers. It's probably quite a niche reference for most people.
I couldn't tell you what that is. But my gaming knowledge is very obviously limited, as we know. Casual. Obviously we'll get into the relationship with Ben a bit later and how that obviously came to today where we're now in a company together. But I think some listeners at home might not be aware of actually your educational background. Obviously you went to uni, but you haven't done anything to do with gaming really in all of your sort of education. Obviously now you're learning Unity, but you didn't study game development or a related field in any shape or form. How did you acquire the skills, you think, without that formal, educational and training?
It was definitely an opportunity I had because I didn't have to get a job like a lot of people do when, during the summer of sixth forms, basically. So when you're 16, 17, 18, these 2 or 3 summers. So I sort of spent most of that time, I was just I wanted to make something. Well, it didn't start then. It started before that. Yeah. But that's when I started taking it more seriously because other people started getting jobs. So I was like, oh, well, I'll start treating it like a job, trying to learn how to code kind of thing. And yeah, it was mostly from YouTube videos, a couple Udemy courses. They go on offer all the time, so they're pretty cheap. It's £10 a course or something. It's definitely worth it. You learn a lot from those. But I got into it when the Apple TV came out. Not the first one. The first one that third-party developers could make apps for, which I believe came out in 2014 or 15. I think maybe 15. And I got hyped about it. For some reason, that just looked cool to me. I saw the advert and it had this Beck soundtrack, and it was just awesome. So I was like, I'm gonna make some sort of app for this. I'm gonna try, because on and off for a few years before that, I'd been trying to make, had a few attempts at making a tiny app, and I just couldn't do it. It was too hard. But I let myself off because I was quite young. So yeah, the Apple TV came out, got my hands on one so I could test my projects on it. You could plug it into your computer and whip out Xcode, code something in, and then see how it runs on the Apple TV, and put it on the TV, which is pretty cool. You can see it on a big screen, which is nice. And that was the first time I made something that was kind of what you could call an app, I guess. Following some tutorials and on Udemy. That was a Udemy course, actually. So yeah, I followed that and sort of like expanded on their like example project they had. They sort of said like, use this as a base, try and add your own stuff to it, which I think is the best way to learn. Doing lots of different projects and trying to not just following tutorials. You have to follow tutorials, but you also should be doing your own little things. And even if you do take a tutorial, you should try and add your own stuff to it as well to challenge what you've learned and try and like internalize it. So I did that, and I made a game, like a snap game. It was basically, all it was random colors appeared on two sides of the screen, and when they're the same color, you click. That's it. It's snap. Yeah. That was like a mountain climb for me though. Back then, that was crazy hard to code, because I tried to make like an in-app purchase. I tried to have like controller support on it as well. That was like, I learned a lot then. But that was definitely the point where you could say that I got able to make something. Not something good, but I could put something together and submit it onto the App Store, and that was really cool. Because even though, like, now you look back at it and it didn't get that many downloads, I think it's got something like 2 downloads a day or something, if that, probably less. And I think maybe only 5 people bought the in-app purchase or something. It was like 79p, so it wasn't even enough to surpass Apple's like threshold of when they actually send you the payment. But it was still cool because I'd made something on it wasn't the App Store, it was the TV store, whatever it's called. But it was cool to get that experience of making something and actually finishing it, because that's quite hard to do as well. But yeah, then after that I just carried on. I kind of didn't go further with the Apple TV after that. That was sort of just, I guess, a bit of a fanboy moment. But app development in general, I did try and carry on with in after that point. I made like I think I only made like one other really basic game, which was just like tapping to level up or something.
It's
you remember that?
Levels, of
that was 2016. So when I was 16,
wow.
I made that. I think that was actually easier than the TV app to make. It was really basic, and it didn't have any purchases or controller support, anything like that. It was just a basic iPhone app. It was basically, the most simple iPhone game you could possibly make. And somehow Apple accepted it onto the App Store. So in terms of my education though, you said it doesn't match really with game development. It's kind of true in the sense that all that stuff I said about developing these apps when I was younger, before I got to Final Outpost, that was helpful, but I have never like done a formal qualification in anything related to computers actually. I did biology and chemistry and stuff at school, and I did neuroscience at university, which is biology related. So there's nothing there which is really mathematical, or, well, I guess there's a bit of maths in biology, but there's nothing computational there really. Nothing with programming or anything like that. So there is that. I didn't learn any of that stuff from school or university. I just did that on my own. So that's why I think I want to say that it's definitely doable to learn this stuff without having done it in school. I think when you talk about programming to a lot of people, they immediately think that it's a lot of maths, and that they weren't good at maths in school, so they won't be able to do programming either. So there's no point even trying. And there is some maths on in some sense, but you can do a lot of programming without any maths really. It's like the core the core like experience of programming is not really math at all. It's just like controlling the logic of the computer. When you get into more complex game development, like controlling where things are moving and stuff like that, then the maths comes in. But generally, it's very doable for someone that doesn't. You don't even need really complicated maths. Usually, it's quite basic, like knowing how to make a circle or making something move with time in a certain way. You can do a lot with really basic maths, I would say. So yeah, I'd encourage people to learn how to code, or try at least, because yeah, it's less scary than it sounds if you know where to look on YouTube. Just find those tutorials.
Yeah, of course. And that's literally, you've answered my next question, to be honest. I was going to ask, how did you ever think about making Final Outpost itself, and when did it become feasible that it might sort of become something with the potential that it has now?
I don't think I saw that it really could be. I wanted to make something that would do better than the Snap game, which isn't hard because it is terrible. But it was the main reason I made it was because I wanted to like make something that had these features in it that I thought were cool. It took a lot of features from other games that I'd played before, and I kind of put them in the game unconsciously. But it wasn't like a sudden moment where I was like, this is a cool combination of mechanics to put in a game. It really started off because it all came down to like how my coding skills were actually quite bad then, even after making those two smaller apps. For making a game, I still knew nothing. So I came up with a really basic idea that was like, let's have some buildings behind a wall that you can upgrade, and you have some zombies that come down the screen towards your wall in waves, and you have to kill the zombies, and that's pretty much it. You have people that go out into the forest and collect resources. So I tried to make something, along those lines. And I think the reason that worked is because that idea was so simple that I could actually make it, even though I didn't have the very good skills. And yeah, I just kept adding features and changing parts of the game until it became Final Outpost now, or Final Outpost on release, which was February 2020 1.0. It was a very different game then.
Yes.
But even that game was completely different to my original idea for the game. That is what I would want to stress there. Yes. Like it was a 2 year, longer than 2 years. No, it was 2 years. It was 2 years, where I kept like working on the game for a couple months, leave it for a couple months, even 6 months, come back to it, work on it for another couple months, and each time I'd like add a whole boatload of new things that I thought would be a cool idea. And it sort of expanded into this management game where there was always this citizen assignment idea.
Yeah.
But everything else is pretty different from the original idea.
Yeah, and for those new players out there that maybe they've only played since maybe 1.3 or 1.2. What were the biggest challenges you faced before the actual release of the game, do you think?
In terms of development?
Yeah, development itself.
Just time. It was really hard to... I had a whole list of things I wanted to put in the game at some point. I started working on it in this first summer holiday, basically. So I had 2 months to work on it, 2.5, to put together a really basic prototype where you can actually do something in this game. And then the limiting factor was the fact that then I had to go to uni, because this was the holiday of that holiday once you finish school, but it's just before you go to uni. So the uni was just too intense to be able to work on a game on the side, so I had to leave it till the next summer to start working on it again. that's really hard, because if anyone's done coding before, you know that if you leave your code for longer than 3 weeks, let alone 6 months or 7, 8, 9, you have no idea what you did before that. You have to just spend an entire week getting back into it to try and work out what the hell you did before. But at the same time, it sort of forced me to get into this cycle of, okay, this is what I produced last time. Let's review it. What do I think it should be based on this? What can I change? What can I add? Does this feature actually work? Does it need to be here? So I think that's the reason it actually ended up being released at all.
Yes. Of course, a year makes all the difference, right? So if you're going from the previous year to the next year, and you look at your code and maybe you come up with ideas that are completely different to what you had before.
I can give an example about that, actually. Go for it. Because I did have... So I think most of the features weren't like a waste of time. Right. So what I mean is, when you're working on a feature, you don't always know it's going to work before you've made it. So I think I got pretty lucky in that almost everything I did was just a tweak of what I'd done before, or it just needs a new thing adding to the game. But there was one feature that I did try to add, which I spent weeks on, and then had to make the horrible decision of just forgetting about it and chucking it out because it just didn't work. It was technically really hard to do for me, and it also didn't really fit in with the game anyway, so I just decided to drop it. And that was so in the game at the moment, you can see the zombies coming into your wall from above, but I did have this idea back really early in development where I wanted you to be able to sort of press a button to allow you to look at the wall from the side and see the zombies coming in, and seeing your people shooting at them from above, because I thought that would be cool. And I think that's what a lot of people do when they do game development on their own, especially. You have big ideas when you're an indie dev, I think, usually, and you always want to just add the next cool thing that you come up with. And it's not always a good idea, unfortunately, even if on its own it's a really cool feature. When it comes into a game that already exists, into a project that already exists, it doesn't always chime. So
of course. Let's talk about the comparisons for Final Outpost. We've had RimWorld on mobile. That's one. Minecraft as well. You said you've taken a lot of inspiration from other games. Maybe name a few of those games and why that was an inspiration for you.
I don't think any of the games that people compare Final Outpost to were any of my inspirations. So, what was there? There was... I guess it's all of the sort of management games that I play, have played as well. Like when I was younger, I think the main genre I played was management games, like managing your farm, managing your cinema, managing your city, whatever it may be. It's always some sort of management simulation game, except for when I went over to friend's house and we played Call of Duty or whatever. Then I got exposed to FPSs. But yeah, most of my influences were games where I think I mentioned Don't Starve at some point, and I don't know why, because now I don't see the link. I also mentioned Caesar 3, I think it was, which is a niche reference. I think not many people played that game, but I think it came out in 2000, maybe even earlier. It was just a PC game where you're in Roman times and you build your Roman city and try and defend it from these legions that come in. I think can't really remember it even anymore, but it's just one of those games where you build buildings, you upgrade them, you manage you manage which buildings you build, you manage what your people are doing, where your resources are going, and trying to defend, that kind of thing. So that was probably the main inspiration, I think.
Obviously, you mentioned management growing up was one of your biggest genres to play. But what do you think about the appeal of maybe the survival horror genre in gaming? What do you think makes zombie survival games so unique? And how did that affect the game design for Final Outpost?
Yeah, I definitely have to bring up zombies for this because that is obviously a key. It's the main theme of the game, right? Even though it is a town management building game, it is inherently a zombie game. I don't think it probably wouldn't be a cool game if there wasn't zombies outside your town, right?
Yeah.
And I think that definitely came from somewhere. For me, yeah, it was big fan of The Walking Dead, right? So I read the comics, not all of them, but I read up to a certain point. I watched the TV show, played the games, everything. So I know how the whole universe of The Walking Dead works. So I wanted to, at the same time as making this strategy management game, I also wanted to bring that world into it as well. So that also kind of played into how realistic I wanted some parts of it to be, like having the zombies be attracted by sound, stuff like that, which actually I think is something that's not done very often, even though zombie games are really popular and there's loads of them. They're usually just like shoot zombies kind of thing. Not usually got this stealth element or this thing about people being important as well. It's more of a life in that universe than anything else.
Okay. Let's go back to 2020, February 2020. Okay. Obviously, Final Outpost made its debut just before the global pandemic. Everyone was spending more time at home, obviously, during the lockdowns. And can you give us some insight into maybe how that timing affected the game and its success?
I'm pretty sure it would have had an impact. It was really coincidental how that happened because I released it on the end of February 2020, and the pandemic had kind of started then, but in Europe it was just getting going. I think it was early March where things started going crazy. But I don't think there was people like mass indoors in Europe and America, in Europe and the United States, until mid to late March. I think it was mid-March. And I remember seeing the game, it did well before that as well. So it's interesting. I think the game already did better than I expected before the lockdown started in its first sort of 2 weeks on the store. It had something like 1,000 pre-orders, which I was happy with because I think that was more downloads on day one than any other app I'd made, or all my apps that I'd made before that combined. So yeah, I was happy with 1,000 pre-orders. I don't think 1,000 pre-orders is that much on the App Store. But that was 1,000 pre-orders with me putting a little advert out as well on Facebook. That helped because I had this pre-order period open for a month before the release at the end of February. So the whole of February, it was you could look at it on the App Store and you could pre-order it. But that pre-order period, I think I only got like 150 pre-orders, something like that. But then I put this advert out on Facebook and it shot up to 1,000. That was a mistake. I should have put the advert earlier in the pre-order period. I only actually submitted the advert like 2 days before the app came out. I should have been running it throughout the pre-order period. But yeah, that's something we've learned.
Yeah, of course. And it was a similar thing for Android as well when we released on Android, because obviously we had a period where we were trying to get it working on Google and that sort of thing, and just took a long time.
But yeah, then it came out right, and it got that 1,000 on day one, 1,000 downloads, but then it just went up, right? Didn't expect that. I thought it would just only go down from there, like you'd usually expect with a game. They usually get all their downloads in the first couple of weeks. But yeah, it went up. It's peaked. Yeah, it was going up actually until, let's say, when everyone started being inside in March. And yeah, then it carried on going up, probably because of the lockdowns. People looking for new games to download on the App Store, which definitely would have boosted us. But yeah, I guess what I'm saying is the game was doing well on its own already, and I think it probably just got accelerated further by the pandemic starting. It definitely would have also been helped for the next sort of year or two as well. I imagine it probably got 50% more downloads than it would have done otherwise, something like that. But yeah, it was a good launch in the end. I think we peaked at something like 20,000 downloads a day, which is crazy.
Obviously, it was debuted in the top 100 in strategy games on the App Store as well. Mobile gaming is a very competitive market. Obviously, everyone and their nan is making a game now,
Well, not their nan.
Maybe not their nan.
Yeah.
And probably doesn't have the coding skills. It's not the generation.
Well, I've not got anything against nans, just to be clear.
Obviously, you've touched on it there, but why do you think Final Outpost did stand out and had the success that it did? In detail, maybe.
I think that's hard to answer. I think because of the stuff I said, the stuff earlier about what I thought was sort of unique about the game, because it has the zombies, but it's not got zombies in the way that games usually have zombies in. It's kind of, at least to me, refreshing in that way. That's kind of why I made it. And it's also got all of these management things that I think these days are usually, if they're in a mobile game, they're kind of hidden, or they're kind of influenced by these monetization mechanics. Like in Clash of Clans, it's the same as Final Outpost in the sense that you're building a town and you upgrade buildings, but in Clash of Clans, after your first building takes 10 seconds to build, your 10th building takes 3 hours to build, and it gets worse and worse. So that's what I mean by it might have similar mechanics from other games, but not sort of integrated with the monetization. I tried to keep that quite separate, so I think a lot of people thought it was also refreshing in that sense. Yeah,
of course. And I'd say at the start it was that sort of pick up and play game. As we've developed it, it's kind of leaned more towards maybe simulation. Maybe at first it was a bit more casual. In your opinion, do you think that Final Outpost leans, like now, let's say now in the present, do you think it leans more towards simulation or casual gameplay? And how do you strike a balance between the two to still make it fun, but immersive for players at the same time?
That's very hard to answer. You got another brilliant question. But that is basically the question that we have in our mind the whole time we're developing it now. Since probably, since it did well on release, we've been trying to sort of bolster the simulation side of the game, bring in more interesting mechanics. And we've got the other side of that, which is, so on one side we want to add more simulation stuff because we want it to become a more interesting game, that something we can be more proud of. And on the other side, it's still a mobile game, so we're trying to be careful not to go too far onto the simulation side, like you might do with a PC game for some hardcore simulation management lovers. You can't really do that. You can't go all the way on mobile, because you're working with a smaller screen, but two, because the audience is different. So when you make a mobile game, you're developing more for the general audience. I don't think a person, even if they are like a simulation kind of gamer, a management gamer, they're not going to be looking for that management game on a phone.
Yeah.
They know that they're going to get the game that they want on a PC.
Yes.
So we have to leave out features that we might like to put in the game, but just don't really fit mobile.
Yeah.
Like there's some parts which a lot of people ask for, like I can't really think of an example, but a lot of parts of the game people want more depth in, like having more control over certain aspects of your management, which would be cool and is a good idea, but it just doesn't fit to a mobile game.
Yeah.
It would require too much UI. It would be clunky. Some people wouldn't understand it. They haven't played such a complex management game before. And on top of that, it's just extra work for us. It is a small mobile game. It doesn't make a lot of money. It makes a bit of money, but it's not enough to sustain the crazy deep development that would be necessary to make features like that in the game. So yeah, every time we add a new feature in the game, we think how complex does it need to be, and we try and fit it to the audience, fit it to the screen, fit it to what we can do, basically.
Yes. Yeah, of course. And for new players as well that we're obviously trying to get on board, it makes sense, to make it too. Obviously, for our existing players who know the game inside and out, that simulation side, they're always going to want more of that.
Yeah.
But for new players, it's obviously difficult to strike that balance. Talking about player engagement, discuss the importance of that in a strategy simulation game, because it's obviously quite difficult to create an experience that is addictive enough to keep players immersed. And also coming back for more. So yeah, just touch on the importance of that, of the engagement of players,
of how fun it is. I think that's important. I think, with any game, it needs to be engaging and fun for them to want to keep playing it, right? And I think that's the same here as with any other game.
Yeah.
There is potentially a bit of a difference between how you keep mobile gamers engaged compared to how you keep PC gamers engaged. I think PC gamers potentially are more interested in they want a deep, complex experience with a management game. Not all the time, but management games that we like are like that. And yeah, you have to make a game that fits a sort of more hardcore sort of experience. So yeah, the features that you put in need to be more complicated to match that, right? And yeah, I guess they're more looking for like a good experience that they want to play like straight away when they download, whereas a mobile gamer might be looking for more of an idle game and want to come back to it like whenever they're bored kind of thing. So they might want to be they're probably looking for something that they can come back to like week after week, like when they're on the bus or the train or whatever. Whereas a PC gamer, obviously they're sitting down to get that like premium experience that they're giving their time intentionally to while they're at home. They could be doing other things, but they're choosing to spend it on a PC to play these games that these developers make. Whereas a mobile gamer, maybe they can be the same person. I'm not saying mobile gamers and PC people are different, but a mobile gamer, someone who's playing on a mobile right now, sitting on the train, they're like, okay, well, I've got nothing else to do. So that's the difference, I think.
Yeah. Let's move on to the importance of community feedback. So obviously we have our Discord server, as I mentioned before. It's a huge part of why we introduce updates to the game. I know people will be here waiting to hear about the upcoming updates, and we'll get onto that later on. But firstly, just talk about the importance of that, of player suggestions leading up to this point. Obviously, we've introduced a lot of 1.4 as meat storage, for example. We've implemented a lot of player suggestions into recent updates. So yeah, just talk about that.
Yeah, I think most of the development we do is pretty much focused on listening to what the players are saying. So we read all the messages in the Discord, we read all the reviews that we get on the App Store and Google Play, see what people are saying, what they think about the new features that we're adding to the game. There was, in that period where we didn't release any updates, we were still reading this stuff, so we were like, after a while you build up a sense of what people actually want. It's like, there's some people, they have ideas, they have complaints which are different from other people, but when they start coming up repeatedly and over again, you know that that's something that most people playing the game are probably going to want. So those are the things that we focus on when we're trying to choose a new feature that we want to add in an update, or reworking an existing feature to make it like less annoying or more fun. So yeah, that's how we sort of decide what we want to add to the games or to the game. So yeah.
Okay, so now we delve more into the business side of this conversation. We founded Exabyte Games back in December of 2020. What motivated you to take on such a leadership role as you've got now, and what key lessons have you picked up along the way in managing a gaming company?
I think I wanted to do it just because I knew I wouldn't be able to develop the game just on my own from that point onwards. We tried to the summer after, so it came out in February, and then I updated the game a bit just to fix some bugs here and there, but I couldn't work on it again properly until after my exams, because that was in May and June, I think. So whenever I'm busy, then I can't work on the game. It's just going to be, and I'm in second year of university at this point, so it's going to be like that for the next 2 years at least. So yeah, it just wasn't ideal. We managed to make a big update, you and me, in the summer. Mm-hmm. So July, I think August 2020. Yeah, 2020. And it was a cool update, but yeah, there's still so much more to do, right? And there was also this big crowd that were asking for the game on Android. So there was no way I was going to be able to make the game for Android. It had to be completely remade in Unity, because I had unfortunately made the game in the only way I knew how, which was on Xcode with Swift programming language. So that was what we were stuck with in terms of the code base. And yeah, the only way, I don't know how to use Unity, I don't know how to use any game engine at this point. So the only way we can do it really is by trying to convince Ben, my brother, that it's a cool project that you're going to want to work on, making this game in Unity. And yeah, then you'll be part of this company, we can make it together. And since he wants to be a game developer anyway, he's doing computer science at Southampton, it made sense from his perspective as well, because it means he can do his degree and learn how to make games, but then doesn't have to get a job with a company that he has no say in the creative process. So win-win, really.
Yeah. And with that, obviously, I was literally going to mention Ben next. So obviously, Final Outpost runs in the family, as you mentioned. Could you share a bit about your relationship growing up? I know you mentioned before, obviously, you were fighting over the
Ben, right.
Computer. How do you think it influenced your collaboration on Final Outpost, and then your obviously eventual decision to start a company together?
I genuinely don't know what happened, but for the first sort of 15, 14 years of our life, we were just enemies. Not complete enemies, but we got on each other's nerves very often. And then suddenly, like shortly before I went to uni, I think we started getting on with each other, and I don't know what happened. I guess I don't think it was my fault, but there'll be an episode with Ben soon where you can discuss this with him, get his perspective on it. But I think he sort of, from my perspective, he just became much easier to get along with suddenly, like in the space of about a year, less than a year probably. And yeah, this was before Final Outpost. So yeah, by that point we were fully capable of getting along with each other and working together on things. So by the time, even in 2019, when I came up to Ben asking him to make some art for this shitty game I was working on, he was like, sure, pay me a little bit of money and I'll do it for you. And he did everything. So that was the first iteration of the artwork for Final Outpost that wasn't me making some really bad pixel art that I didn't know how to do. Yeah, at least I'm actually not sure where he got the skill from. I think he learned how to illustrate a bit in art at school, that kind of thing. But he'd done some sort of computer graphics work before that point, so he could actually put together some decent looking stuff for me. So that was why I paid him to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Monetization. I'm going to move on to this. Often a sensitive subject in the gaming industry. Final Outpost operates without ads. It was our obviously decision from the very start. What led you to make that decision, and what's your take on games that rely heavily on intrusive ads for revenue?
Intrusive ads is a different question.
Yeah.
I think ads in general are not inherently bad. Mm-hmm. For example, on the internet, I think ads are completely necessary to make free content available to everyone. But when ads are too intrusive, I don't think there's not many examples on the internet where they're too intrusive, but on games, they because it's media that you're interacting with, it's much easier to make ads that are annoying. And lots of ad companies and developers take advantage of that fact, and they put in adverts that they know are going to be annoying because they want people to pay to remove the ads in the game, or ones that tend to be more annoying are also the ones that tend to make more money because you're taking up the whole screen with the ad, so it gets more revenue per user, let's say. But again, it's not a terrible thing, because generally stuff, content and media can only be kept free for everyone if there's ads on it. So I don't have anything inherently against ads, I would say, but I will say that I don't want to put ads in my own game or in my own games because I don't like them. That's the only reason.
Yeah. Okay. In terms of Final Outpost itself, there's one aspect that's caused maybe a little bit of debate. It's the presence of a monetized continue button. Mm-hmm. Obviously, me and you recently have been working out ways that we can maybe ways to benefit our players and not have to use that. Can you shed light on why we've implemented this feature up until this point, and maybe clarify how it enables us to sustain ongoing development and enhancements for the benefit of our players?
Well, there's the answer. No, no. Because I don't like ads. I mean, we have to have some other way to finance the game, basically. So that has to be in-app purchases if you want the game to be free to download. And it definitely wasn't an option for me as a indie dev on the App Store when it first came out, not knowing how popular the game would be. Mm-hmm. Absolutely not an option to make it a paid game, because paid games on the App Store, even in 2020, I think this was the case as far back as 2015 probably, you can't, it's just so unlikely to perform well on the App Store to be a success if you've got a paid game that doesn't utilize an IP that people already know. Unfortunately, even the companies that do have existing IPs are just making free games anyway, even though I think people would pay to download those games. Yeah. I guess it's just a trend, right? So everyone's doing it. But yeah, what was the rest of the question?
But yeah, I guess you said most of it really. But In the eyes of like
Oh,
maybe ongoing development, obviously, and improving the game as much as we can, it's had to be a necessary decision.
Okay, I'll get back to the continue button because I think the continue button is annoying for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I do think for most people it's not annoying. They can see why it's the case, why it's there, because they've just downloaded a free game that they just got to play almost the entirety of without paying anything. It does sort of stand in contrast to our general philosophy of having only in-app purchases which are not required to play the game. Because when the game first came out, we only had that sort of tactical menu, we called it, the in-app purchase menu, where you can just optionally choose to buy some resources in the game to help you out, which some people also don't like because they don't like the idea that they can pay to add more resources to their and save their outposts or whatever. So in response to that, initially in 2020 we added the save slots, so that people could pay to get 2 extra save slots, something that's not optional, something that people can buy to help us develop the game more. But not many people buy it because it's not particularly desirable, I don't think. Yeah. That's the problem. So yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that our goal really is to try and make something that people actually want to buy, because on the App Store, unfortunately, if the game isn't quite a decently sized game, you can't really sell it on the App Store directly. You have to use in-app purchases. That's just the reality for all developers, I think.
Yeah.
So we did, I think it was in 1.2, we introduced the continue button. Mm-hmm. And mixed reception, of course, because before you could just continue free. But yeah, it was something we had to do, I think, especially on Android. I think the game would have been an even bigger flop on Android if we didn't have the continue button in there. Some people might be listening to this and think like, no, the reason it failed or it didn't fail, but the reason it did worse than you expected is because you added the continue button, you silly Billy. To that I say absolutely not. I think the continue thing is the only thing people really buy on Android. They're actually recently people have been buying more of the main in-app purchase menu, like resource purchases. So it's not all bad actually on Android now. So I won't complain about it. It's catching up with iOS actually for us. So I'm pretty happy with that. It was definitely worthwhile moving the game over to Android as well, making it on Unity so we can have it in multiple stores, multiple platforms. Mm-hmm. But yeah, unfortunately, in-app purchases are just kind of a necessary evil on mobile. So we have to put them in. And we are in the future looking towards like making them less of a pain, making them more transparent as well. So you know what you're going to get for the resources ones, for example. But we want to make what a lot of people have asked for is a way to just get rid of all that crap. And that's what we're doing now. We want to release this optional purchase of the full game, if you will, that people can buy, and they'll get access to everything in the game. They'll get the extra save slots. They'll get unlimited ways to continue their save. If they lose, they can try again however many times they like, and get rid of the, I think, I can't remember how we're doing it, but I think optionally get rid of the resource purchasing menu, replace it with a sort of trading system, that sort of thing. So we'll just remove all of these monetization systems that only some people don't like, whereas I think most people are happy to play a free game because they then don't have to spend any money. But if then this sort of sub audience of people that would be happy to part with a few pounds or a few dollars to get the full experience that isn't intrusive in terms of monetization, then they can. And I think that should make everyone happy, hopefully.
Yeah, of course. So you mentioned obviously Unity was needed to make the Android version of the game. Lately, you've been immersing yourself in that program. What aspect of sort of that has been the most enjoyable for you?
Just the speed that you can put together things visually compared to what I'd used before. Because when I made Final Outpost 1.0, that used no game engine at all. Which some people asked me after it came out, "Hey Sam, what game engine did you use to make this game?" And I was like, "I didn't use a game engine," and they were like, "What?" What? But in a way, that limited the complexity of the game, right? At least visually. That's why we've ended up with these little dots walking around that actually has ended up being a cool thing. That's sort of, I don't know, I guess it's kind of a retro, a bit of a throwback to a simpler time for visuals. It's completely 2D because all I knew how to do was move images around a screen, and that was it. And to be honest, that's pretty much all I do still know how to do. It's just moving images around. So that is that's why the game works like that partly, yeah. But the cool thing about Unity is you can do all that visuals really easily. Like you can put in particle emitters, particle systems. You can put in animations really easily. And it just links up with the code really nicely. So yeah, I guess I was silly Billy for not using Unity before, but obviously it came from me making apps before that, so that's why I hadn't used it before. But yeah, now it's cool. I can put together things a lot faster, prototyping games. The one thing, so it is a really cool thing being able to make a game look cool really quickly. You can download assets off the Unity store, which you're allowed to use in a published project, and you only pay a few quid for them. You don't even need to hire anyone to make your art or anything like that. It's kind of crazy how easy it is to make games now. It's still really hard, but it's a lot easier than it used to be, say 15 years ago. Especially more than 15 years ago, then it was really hard. But since Unity became a free thing that anyone can download and make games with, I think that happened in something like 2006. It's been much easier to make games for anyone. There is a slight danger, I think, with it though, which is, it's even an interesting point now that AI is coming out. Or generative AI is coming out, let's say, because everyone's like, oh, it's so easy to make games now. You can make all these things look really cool really quickly. You can make something that looks like Assassin's Creed in a week, and yeah, I guess you can, but you can get, even before this improved AI is coming out now since 2023. It's still not gonna save you, You still need to know how to code. You still need to know what you want your game to be to make it a good game. You need to come out with the ideas still. You still need to be able to put everything together in a interesting way. And the problem when you can make visuals really easily is that you can just get completely sucked up in the visuals. And I think it's quite natural, because when you're just getting started learning game development, you want to be able to show people what you can do now. Like your friend or your family, whatever it might be, just come look at what I made. It looks really cool, right? And so when you're making your little projects that you work on while you're learning how to make how to make a game in the engine, you always want to make it look cool as quickly as possible so that you can show people without being embarrassed. So you end up spending most of your time, or at least just too much time on the visuals, and you don't actually have a game, even a game, something you could really call a game. So yeah, you can end up wasting lots of time on visuals. That is the only thing I would say. But if you're conscious about that and you try with all your might to just make mechanics, and every now and then have a bit of fun with visuals and try and make something that looks kind of cool here and there, I think you can make things really well with Unity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Touching on obviously being a game developer there, maybe people that wish to be one, many don't know where to start. What would be your top piece of advice for any hopeful gaming developers out there?
Where to start with learning?
Yeah.
Absolute beginning. Mm-hmm. Just watch an introduction to Unity video on YouTube. See if it will always be overwhelming at the start. I think there's not really any way around it, but you just watch a few videos on YouTube, see what you think, but don't get into this cycle of just watching tutorials, because a lot of people, I think, when they want to make a game, usually they have another job, right? They have a day job, and you can get into watching game development videos on YouTube. It's cool to see other people's processes, but also watching tutorials while you're not trying to apply the knowledge yourself. You're not going to pick it up. It's a bit like trying to learn how to swim by just watching the teacher in the pool. It's not going to work. You got to do it yourself. So yeah, you really got to, you can follow along with tutorials like I said earlier, but you do need to also do it yourself. Even if at first you're just copying, that's fine. Most of programming is just copying, to be honest. No, that's a bit exaggerated, but you copy tutorials, and if you have a problem, you look it up, you go on Stack Overflow, find what other people's solutions to the same problems are, and sometimes copy the code. So yeah, at first you just got to accept, I think, that you're going to be bad at the start. It's the same with learning any new skill. It takes a long time, and you just got to keep at it, watching tutorials, expanding on some of those tutorials, maybe with your own projects, adding a feature to one of your tutorial projects. And then once you feel like you've gained a lot of knowledge from the tutorials, you can dive into a attempt at your own project, starting from scratch, but don't spend too long on it. Do it for a couple of weeks, maybe a month. And if you find yourself just running constantly up against walls, then get back into the tutorials, maybe get a Udemy course or something, follow along with it. But yeah, basically just keep switching between tutorials and your own project to try and apply the knowledge, and then you'll make it.
Yeah, some really good advice there. I think, yeah, like you say, it's obviously, it can be easy to make a game once you get into it. Obviously, there's a lot of different programs that you can use these days, Unity being one of the main ones. So yeah, really good advice. I want to move on to the future of Final Outpost now, what everyone's been waiting to hear about. First of all, I'm going to start by firing some popular feature suggestions that I've picked up. And you can only answer yes, no, or maybe. Just one word answers, okay? I don't want any expansion, okay? All right. About their inclusion in future updates. So, are you ready?
All right. Can we just clarify on time frame? So,
in terms of,
if I say yes, that means it's coming.
Definitely coming.
That means it's definitely coming. If it's maybe or no, right? I'm saying that it might come this year.
Mm-hmm.
If I say, I
think maybe has to be there the next year, and then no is like you could probably never gonna happen.
Okay.
Well,
we'll
start.
Okay.
I don't want to hear any deliberations about this. We're gonna do this. We're gonna start with difficulty setting.
Yes.
Multiplayer.
No.
Speed up during the day.
Maybe.
Colonies, including traders and raiders.
Maybe.
More zombie types.
Yes.
Carrots. I'll explain this one. There's a guy who put in our feature suggestion channel just carrots.
Right.
But in expansion to that, choosing what JJ, actually our QA tester, said, choosing what crop to grow with better returns in different seasons, maybe.
Yeah. No, sorry. I was about to expand, but I'm not allowed to expand.
No.
If I'm not expanding, then I'll say no.
Okay. Skill tree expansion.
Yes.
Water as a resource.
No.
Zombie infections. So game over doesn't happen, but zombies actually break the wall and infect the people.
No.
Sandbox mode. And I'll explain this as well, actually.
Okay.
Someone suggested it could be an unlock after you survive like a certain amount of days, rewarding players for their success in the later game. See, you can expand on that one, actually. I'm interested to hear your
Yeah,
thoughts
that's probably worth expanding on.
Mm-hmm.
No is my answer, but my expansion is that I think, we need to keep some sort of scope on this project, really. It needs to be, our priority is to just get the core game progression down and make it really nice. And taking people out of that and as a reward for having completed it is not probably not a worthwhile use of development time. We could probably make the core game more interesting,
Yep. More weapons such as machine guns.
Yes.
Tech research tree. So yet again, for example, if you survive over 100 days, you can research advanced weaponry and technology.
Can you repeat that one?
So tech research tree. So if you survive over 100 days, you can. That's just a suggestion. You can research advanced weaponry and technology. So almost like a new, similar to Civilization, where you move into a new era, and maybe since the outbreak, you get towards obviously. I don't know if you've watched the trailer for the new Walking Dead, but obviously there's a lot more things in that. But
I don't think I have actually.
Oh, there you go. See?
Well, we can do that after this. No.
Okay. All right. That's everything from that. So yeah, fair enough. Okay.
You let
you let
that be built up over way too long, and then I just said no. There's a bit more.
Our players obviously eagerly awaiting news for the next Final Outpost update. So we are now going to give you a little bit of information without spoiling too much. What sneak peeks can you offer about the exciting features and improvements that we're bringing, and what can players anticipate in the next update?
Well, it depends when this podcast comes out.
Well, it will be. Well, I can't really put obviously a time frame on it here, but
it'll probably come out about the same time as the update.
It's coming out on our 4-year anniversary.
Right. It still may be, let's say, a maximum of a week till the update comes out.
So don't spoil too much, but maybe just give a brief overview of what players can expect.
Yeah. I've already given away a bit on the Discord server, so I'll probably repeat that again. We're focusing on outpost defense. So new guns, let's say, ways to defend your walls. We're also trying to make the zombies more interesting, more realistic as well. Improving the sort of progression of the zombies. That is a key thing that we want to get right in this update and finally cement down in the game. Because I think at the moment zombies don't really progress. You get normal zombies at the start of the game, and then you get big zombies on day 10, I think. And after that, there's just more of them. And other than that, it doesn't really change. Yeah. So the idea in this update is to introduce, we'll introduce new zombie types and introduce them at points in the game's progression that make sense for the way that you can defend your wall at that stage in the game. So there'll be like fun, different zombie behaviors to see and keep an eye out for during the night, and there'll be different ways you can counter each zombie with your outpost defenses, and it should tie in nicely with the food progression system that we've introduced in the 1.4 update. So it should be it should take you up to something like day 100, and it'll be a really nice game progression now.
Yeah, good stuff. And looking beyond 1.5, how many additional updates do you actually envision before we can confidently say that Final Outpost has reached the point where it's considered a complete game?
Number of updates I can't say, because we don't know if we're going to split certain parts up into different updates, but we're definitely going to be working on it for sure until like the middle of this year at the earliest. The rest depends on how the game does with those updates. We don't know if things are going to improve in terms of the number of players, number of downloads and so on. So that's what we're keeping an eye out for. It really is a cool game in the sense that you can expand on it almost endlessly. And I think like a lot of players have seen that. Like I've got a lot of messages from people saying like this game has so much potential. It's crazy how many things you could add to this. They come up with so many ideas as well. It's a bit overwhelming, really. But yeah, we will add new things, but there's nothing like past the middle of this year confirmed. That is the point where we'll say the game is the base game is done, which should be something like, I don't actually know how long it takes. Let's say 3 or 4 hours of banging content, really good content for people to play through. Unfortunately, given finances and so on, we can't guarantee we will be able to carry on working on the same project after say June or July this year. But yeah, if say it does do well, then we can basically just carry on making updates for quite a long time, I think. Yeah. And there is even the scope to bring it to PC. Crazy, I know. We've been saying no for a long time, but it's getting to the point now where kind of is almost like complex enough for a PC game, a basic PC game, but yeah, it's also a good opportunity for us to sort of test the waters on Steam as well, because we haven't released the game on Steam before. So doing it with this is a good way to get started. So we're definitely considering adapting the game to PC.
Would that be an easy port for?
It's in Unity, so it's easy to. You can export it straight away to PC. We could do it right now, but it needs some weeks of work to adapt the control scheme to a PC and add controller support as well, probably, and change. It would probably need a few UI changes throughout the game as well to adapt to a larger screen. So yeah, it would be a fair amount of work to bring it to PC, but if we determine that it's worth, the potential reward could be worth the effort.
Imagine players controlling the knife fires and choosing which.
Oh, it's not.
I don't want to add too much depth to it, but I could just imagine that.
No, let me clarify though. That's releasing the current game on PC. Yeah, we wouldn't be expanding the game for PC. It would be the same experience but on PC. And I will also say that we don't want to have in-app purchases on our PC game. So the sort of full unlock of the game that I mentioned earlier that we would be adding to the game later this year, to remove all of the in-app purchases and add trading and stuff, that would be the default game on PC, and then you have to, and then you buy it for however much it costs on the Steam store. Yeah.
Okay, makes sense. Looking more into maybe the far future now, could you give us a glimpse into maybe some of the future games that we've discussed, and the genres they might explore. And additionally, what's our role in shaping the future of the gaming industry?
I don't really want to name any topics of future games, because there's no. So we make prototypes of games that, you know, we have ideas and play around with them and see if they're good. But there's none of those yet that we have that we're definitely going to make this into a release game. So yeah, I don't want to name any of them, because I don't want to disappoint anyone if they think an idea is cool and then we don't actually end up taking that one to release.
Okay.
But yeah, we will be making more games. I think we want to make a game very soon for PC, specifically. It might come out on mobile as well, I don't know. But we want to make a game where our primary focus is PC, basically. So that, I will say, is pretty likely for the next game or two. So keep an eye out for that. But yeah, in terms of how we're shaping the gaming industry, I think we're just a very small part of it, really. We are a company, but we're still indie developers, so we're basically part of that indie development scene more than people that get involved with publishers and getting investors and outside shareholders and all that kind of stuff. That's not really what we're aiming for here. It's more like we want to keep all of the creative control to ourselves, so we can sort of do what we want creatively, and hopefully that works out. I think I think it's not gonna affect the rest of the gaming industry. I will think. Yeah, what do you mean by that? How will we influence the gaming industry?
I just think that obviously you can talk about maybe how a little bit about, obviously in future podcasts we want to talk a little bit more about this, but maybe some of the games that have come out that have kind of basically been a scam, let's say, or they've been unreleasable but they've released. There's been a few games, I'm not going to name any examples, but obviously that have come out and there's been too many bugs. Maybe just an idea on the transparency of the company. And, you know.
They're good points, actually. Yeah, I guess we just want to be an example for what we want other game developers to be like. So yeah, there has been that trend recently, probably in the last sort of 6 or 7 years, where more developers, usually ones that have publishers, are releasing games early, often with a lot of bugs and problems, and people being very disappointed with their launches, and that kind of ruins the experience of the game when the launch has gone badly. We're not completely free of that, of that I don't know, burden, but I can give excuses for that though. But we weren't really working on the game very, very often back then. Now we've got the last couple releases have gone very well because we're actually coding full time now. Ben's doing a great job on that. So yeah, I guess another part of it is we want to tackle projects that are in the size that we can actually make, because you can go a bit too big you can go too small and you can go too big. Even if you have multiple people working on it, you can make a game that's just too difficult for that number of people to make, or with that skill set. So if it goes sort of out of that range, then it can get too much, and that could lead to some of this these games that are having release issues. But I think like a lot of I've seen studios, right, they if they need more development time, they just say, right, we're delaying the game for a bit and we need more development time. And I think everyone respects that because they're like, cool, I don't want to have to pre-order a game and then get a buggy mess as a result.
I'll stop you there quickly because that's another thing, obviously delaying games because obviously their release date was maybe a bit too ambitious. But do you not think that even 10 years ago that wasn't a thing either? Like they named a date and it would come out on that date and it would be a good game. Do you think that even the pushback on release dates is a thing that's only happened in sort of the last 5-6 years?
Well, I think there's always been delays on game releases, haven't there? Because it's hard to estimate the length that a game will take to develop, so it's quite natural that you will have delays. There's nothing wrong with game delays. It maybe means that you might have announced your release date a bit too early, but other than that, you didn't really do anything wrong. Like I say, I think most people respect when there's a delay to a game because it means they know the developer is caring about the quality of the project that they're releasing. So, I guess what we want to do is be sort of fulfill that ideal, and do everything the way that we've seen happen with all the games that we used to play as children. So I think we know kind of how that works as well because we played so many games when we were younger that we know when we see developers that are sort of messing everyone around and ones that aren't. So it's easy to see when a developer's doing that or when they're not. Often it's not the developer. Usually developers are good people. It's often the publisher or the company or the investors, whatever. But this is just the state of the industry now. It's definitely got worse in the last year or two. Lots of big games being released in this state, which is pretty crazy. I'm not sure it's even a good business mindset to have because you're going to make people have less faith in pre-orders from that point. They're like, I'm not going to be able to pre-order any games in the future because I'm not going to be sure if the game's going to work until I see it's been released and I see the reviews from all of the reviewers. So anyway, I think we'll do our best on that front. That's what I'm saying,
and we'll divulge more into that I think in a future podcast. But in terms of this one, I'm pretty much happy with everything that's been discussed today. So unless you've got anything else that you want to tell the viewers, we'll wrap it up.
Download Final Outpost.
Of course, that's always our top piece of top advice is download the game. We appreciate everyone that's tuned into this podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation here today, make sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Share it with your fellow Final Outpost enthusiasts. That's everything from us today. Feel free to drop your thoughts or any questions to us on Discord. Make sure to obviously join our Discord in the first place and our Reddit, biggest community. You can obviously holler at us anytime. We're pretty much active quite a lot of the time, aren't we, on Discord? So.
Pretty much on there every day.
We love hearing from our community. So stay connected, and until then, survivors, we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks for listening.